Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a die-hard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate you all so much. We are so close to 2,000 subscribers, so please subscribe. Today we're going to talk about Media Day. And I'm so disappointed. Why could not anybody stream Media Day? The Pistons have their own YouTube channel, Piston TV, and so it just kills me that they could not put that on there. It's so much nicer to get to watch and see the people as they talk and say whatever they're going to say. So, big takeaway we're going to talk about is Ausar Thompson. He is not going to be able to start off training camp in the full capacity. He can do things, non-contact things, but he's not going to be able to play in scrimmage. And like I said, I was very confident that he was going to enter, if he was healthy, that he would enter training camp and that he would dominate and that he would just force the coaches to have to play him. But before we start diving into that a little bit more, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Basketball is more than just a game. It's more than just, something that we watch and we get crazy about. It's about people. And so, that's a concerning thing. That's this Ausar's life. Ausar loves basketball as much as anybody in the world. You could just tell it by the way he plays, by listening to him talk. It's all he cares about. He's got the spirit of a young child that just first falls in love with basketball. He still has that. But the Kente Mutombo just passed away, and he died of brain cancer. I had a brother that was my best friend that was really close in age to me, that we shared the same bedroom, that he had brain cancer and he passed away. But he'll be missed. He was a great player, great shot blocker, waved that finger after he blocked somebody's shot, but he donated so much of his life to helping other people in Africa. He just was a servant of the world. So that was disappointing. And then people get traded. They're big. Karl Anthony Towns got traded to the Knicks, and they gave up Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. So they had all these guys from Villanova that were on the Knicks. It's supposed to be the Villanova Knicks, and but Brunson played on Villanova with DiVincenzo, and he was in his wedding, and now he's on a different team. So we see these trades and transactions and things, but it's much more than just transaction. It's people losing their friends, or people having to move, and people losing a friend, and people in the NBA. Zach Lowe, that was really fantastic for ESPN, got let go. He made too much money, and so they wanted to cut costs, and so they let him go. And I know I love listening to the Low Post podcast that he did, and he's always enjoyed watching him on NBA Today. But he lost his job, and that's hard for anybody. And Derrick Rose, he retired, and he was one of the most exciting, brilliant players. He was the youngest MVP, I think, in NBA history, and his career was limitless. And then he got a terrible knee injury, and then he retired. But here's this guy. He gave back, I don't know if it was $2 or $4 million back to the Grizzlies that he just didn't take, that he could have still taken. But yeah, before we talk about the Pistons, I did hear the stat. The Pistons in the last 4 years have won 75 games in the last 4 years. The Warriors team with Klay Thompson and those guys, and they had the greatest team in history. They had the most wins in history. They won 74 games. So that team with Steph and those guys, they won 74 games in 1 year. We won 75 games in 4 years. But I am optimistic, and I know you can call me a fool because we were optimistic last year. But I think there's so much pessimism about the Pistons this year, and such a lack of optimism. But I think this team is going to be a lot more fun to watch. And I think that we might not, record-wise, I don't see a way we can make the playoffs. I mean, the team with the fewest wins that made the playoffs last year was 36, and it seems impossible for us to win that many more games to get up to 36. So But anyway, I just think that this year we're going to be so much more fun to watch, play such better basketball, and I think the following year is when we're going to jump into the playoffs. That's what I anticipate. So, and if that happens, so here's the thing: that part of that deal that traded DiVincenzo and Julius Randle for Cat included the Pistons' infamous draft pick that we traded a long time ago to the Rockets so that we could draft Isaiah Stewart. So this year, this upcoming year, it's a top 13 protected, which probably we'll never do that. So we'll still get our pick. Then the following year, it's a top 11 protected. So we might get it that year, but for sure, I would think in 3 years, it's going to be only a top 9 protected. And if it doesn't convey, then it turns into second round draft picks, but we don't want that to happen. So another big news, the Pistons next Sunday are going to be on NBA TV, on ESPN, preseason game at 8 p.m. playing the Bucks. So that is really cool. We never get on national TV, but we get to be the first game, even though it's just an exhibition game. So I am thrilled to get to watch that. So my granddaughter, she verbally committed to Wayne State. Why do I bring that up? Because I'm so proud of her, but also because Wayne State is where the Pistons are going to be having open practice this coming Saturday. So that's going to be a really cool thing. So if you can get down there to Wayne State University and you can watch the Pistons practice, that is the Pistons practice facility. It's also where the Crews play their games. It's also where Wayne State plays their games. So they both, combined and built that building, and it's state-of-the-art building. So it's really cool that my granddaughter's going to get to play there. She's only a junior in high school, so she's got 2 more years of high school to play, but she'll be playing there in 3 years. So let's start with Cade Cunningham. And so it was really cool, watching him. I got to see some clips of him, at Media Day today, and he talked about how it was never a question. He knew he wanted to play here. It was just a matter of time before he was going to get it signed. And you always know that about Cade. And Cade he got so fired up. He went to the Tigers game when the Tigers clinched and made the playoffs. And he was at that game, and he got pumped up and said, we want that for the Pistons. We want to be the next team in Detroit, like the Lions and the Tigers, to turn things around and get some excitement. And he said, there's nothing like Detroit when they get excited and they have their fans get behind you. And so he's really optimistic. And you just can see that about Cade. And I know they talked about Cade's leadership, and Trajan and JB, they talked about what a great leader he is and how he's the type of person, he's about everything we want to be about. And so that, that comes across. It comes across in every interview, every time you see him sitting on the bench, every second that you see him on the court, just the way he handles himself and conducts himself. But he's excited about this upcoming season, and he's excited about the veterans. He said they brought an edge to practice. They play with a little chip on their shoulder, and so that's made these, their open gyms and their scrimmaging a lot more fun. And he thinks they're going to make a big difference. But he's worked on his floater game, which is big because he missed his percentage at the rim was not the best, and so he's worked on his floater game, so he thinks that's going to help him, and so he's not going to have to not miss as many shots around the rim because he won't have to take it right in and make contact with them. Although, I still want him to get contact because we want him to draw fouls, and so I don't know if I've ever said this. Jaden Ivey draws fouls way more than Cade, but it's because he's going at such a high rate of speed, and when guys go faster, it seems to me that they draw a lot more fouls. So anyway, again, I'll just touch back. I'm going to jump around a lot today. Like I do that quite often, but they've been practicing, and a lot of the guys have been around in the facility for quite some time now, and they're all excited about all these players. And one of the players that they're most excited about is Jaden Ivey. And I talked about this before. A lot of you are down on J.I., and I can see why, especially that last month and a half of last season, he went in the tank. And I think he's an emotional kid, and he just has such a big heart. But they said that he is been the most diligent worker out of everybody. And that's for everything that they do, for weightlifting, for the cool downs, for every aspect of the game. He is an incredible bright spot, and they have to pull him back. And this was said last year. They had to kick him out of gyms, especially if he was on the road. That the opposing team, they would kick him out. He just works harder than anybody, and he cares as much or more than anybody. So, you can be mad at him if he's not consistent. But I will say this: they also talked about Fred Vinson and having Fred Vinson, our new shooting coach, having a plan. They want him to have a plan for all the players, even the veterans, and find out what they have that works and what that doesn't work. But I will tell you, last year I could see when he was going through a slump or when he was shooting really well. It was all in his shooting motion, his follow through, his extension, where he followed through at, and there were streaks where he would do it consistently right. You could tell there were times when at the very end of the season, he started to get around to shooting better again. And he was really having to focus in on this form. But having Fred Vinson there and having somebody that's going to break down his shot all the time, and they just need to show him, on videotape where his arm goes and how his follow through and how his extension is, and compare it to when he's successful, when he's not successful. I mentioned it a couple times before when I talked to John Beeline when he was the head of senior advisor for player development, and I showed him a picture of Cade and his follow through. He said, I'm going to show that to Cade tomorrow because Cade's follow through was out instead of up. And so his shot was flat. But Fred Vinson is way smarter than I am. He is regarded as the best shooting coach, along with Chip, that is for the Oklahoma City. And I think that it's going to make a big difference for a lot of our players, even our veteran players. There might be just one little thing that they do wrong. It's really easy to fall in a bad habit. But yeah, Ivey, the communication with JB and compared to Monty is just not even comparable. And he's been in lots of talks with Jaden Ivey and breaking things down and finding out what he is looking forward to and what his goals are and what he's about. And JB's talking about his coaching staff and all the players communicating, spending time off the court talking to these guys. So when something goes wrong, they're going to be able to correct it, and it's not going to be a sudden thing where, if you don't talk. So here's the thing about Monty that I talked about. I was concerned when we hired him. I said, there are a lot of good things, and I gave Monty the benefit of the doubt when the season started. But before we hired him, or right when we first hired him, I said, there's something wrong when he had Ayton, who played on his team the year before, and they went to the playoffs, and he benched him at the end of a game in the Western Conference Finals when they got blown out. But Ayton was the only one that got benched, and they started up the next season, and they had preseason practice had been going on for over 2 weeks, official practice. A reporter asked Ayton, so have you and Monty discussed anything? He said, Monty hasn't said a word to me. And that's communication. That's what things are about. And like JB said, if you're continually communicating and you're staying on top of things, then all of a sudden, when something goes wrong down the road, it's not the end of the world. You can recover much easier from it. So he's going to do that with Ivey. And I know that Trajan is excited about all the different possibilities for Jaden Ivey and what he can do both on the ball and off the ball and even on defense. He talked about that and what a difference he can make, and he can impact both sides of the ball. So I'm just really optimistic about how things are going to go for him. And when he has somebody, it's really important to have somebody that believes in you. And I saw that as a coach, and it's really hard. It's hard when you have your sixth or seventh player on your team, and they can go out there and they don't get to play. They don't start, and then they get in the game and then make a couple mistakes in a row. A lot of times they get jerked, and so hard to be confident. Then you go out there the next time and you're afraid, if I miss one shot or make one mistake, I'm going to get jerked again. So I think though Ivey is going to have at least a really good shot at starting out, knowing that his coaches believe in him and have confidence in him, and we'll see where it goes from there. But he's a hard worker. So I know that Trajan said that what he wants, not he's not putting a number of wins on the team, but he wants everybody to know that when the Pistons come to play, that what they're about, and that they're going to be about doing things the right way, playing tough and competing hard every day at a high level. So they're excited about all the vets, that all the vets want to be there. They also talked to them, and they all want playing time. That's one of the reasons they came. And so, and some of them, I'm sure, I'm sure that Tobias didn't have more money offered anywhere else, but he, they talked about it. Trajan talked about he wants to be here. And Tobias, I loved him when he was here the first time. I talked about that before, but he is going to be a leader. He has always conducted him in first class. He's a first class guy. Every second on the court and off the court, a lot like Cade. Cade, I think, is a little bit better of a leader. I think Cade's a little more talented of a player, but I think those are going to be our two leaders this year. And I think that he does things the right way every time. And that the difference between good and great is consistency. And when you can say something about somebody doing the right thing every time, and Tobias does that, and Cade is going to do that, then you got two great leaders. So, real quick, we're just going to talk. Bickerstaff sees Isaiah Stewart as a 5, not a 4, and he talked also a lot about putting players into their best position to be successful, and that's what coaching is about. I've talked about that. Coaches, there's some coaches who are brilliant, great with X's and O's, know a lot of good drills, they know how to teach a lot of things, but it's also about figuring things out, putting the players in the right. I ran a lot of plays when I was a high school coach, and then I would see other players. I would share my plays with some other coaches, and they would put the wrong players into the positions. Like instead of, if the play is designed to go the first option to player X, and that's not a person that can put the ball in the basket, then, I said it sounds like a simple thing, but I've seen too many coaches that don't do that. And I think that, JB is going to look to make the most of everybody's talent and their strengths. So they're going to work on their weaknesses after practice or maybe early before practice, but they're going to focus first and foremost on their strengths. So he thinks Isaiah Stewart can be a great offensive rebounder, and what can we do to put him into position to get offensive rebounds? So another thing about Cade, and I'm jumping around again, but he went to that Tiger game and he said it just gave him chills. And I think we're going to get that this year. I think there's going to be moments where we get chills, and Cade wants it. Cade said he wants to be the head of the snake, and that just that's what we want to hear. And we've seen it. We've seen it every day. Again, I pay attention to every interview I see, that I read or see. I think that it really matters. So I also am excited that JB sees things about spacing, and that there's vertical spacing, and you can not just having 3-point shooters out there, but he's talked about playing a smaller player in the dunker spot, which I would assume he would be talking partly about Ausar. So we'll see what happens there. I'm jumping around again, but the open gym is 12:30 to 2 o'clock Saturday. So it's free. So you get down there. If you watch, I'm going to do my best to get down there. So let's talk about Fontecchio. So I wasn't unaware. We knew that he missed because of his toe, Fontecchio toe. He had that toe that was injured, and so they held him out. He only played 16 games for us. But I still think that he is going to be one of the biggest difference makers for this team. I think he's been talked about way less than all these other players. And I think, when he was on the court, whatever combination he was out there with, they were efficient and effective. And so I just think he's going to make a big difference. But he has been, he had surgery at the end of May. So then he's been just constantly doing rehab all summer. And then finally, about a month ago, he started to get to play 5-on-5. So he's excited. His wife just had a baby. And so they didn't get back over to the United States. And that's another thing. These are people. Some people that are from live in another country, and then their lives get changed, and they have to move their family, and they have kids and babies, and it just is it's not just about what we see on the court. So anyway, I'm thrilled to get to watch him play and see what he can do. But he really appreciated the Pistons trading for him. He's excited about the potential of getting more playing time, and the Pistons wanted to trade for him. And so he said he'll never forget that, and he'll always be grateful for that. My thing is, I don't know if I said this, one of the biggest disappointments in the offseason. So we re-signed him, and I'm thrilled. But I cannot for the life of me understand. We paid him only $6 million a year. He is way underpaid. We overpaid Tobias, even though I like Tobias, but we way overpaid him. But we way underpaid Fontecchio, and maybe that's what his agent wanted to do. But we signed him for only 2 years. So my thing was, I paid him more every year. I would have found out what it took to get him for at least 3 years. He's 28, but I would have wanted a 4th year and had that be a team option if I could have. I would have done anything. He's just too much of a player that you need. He shot 40% on threes, high volume of his shots, but he also can attack the rim. He also can pass. He's also a good, decent defender. And so I just wish we would have, gone all in on him and got him at least for 3 years. But, maybe his agent wanted him to go for another contract to get a bigger contract. But I just think we could have paid him, instead of $6 million a year, paid him $12 million a year for 3 years instead of $12 million a year, $12 million for each year, and paid him $36 million for 3 years instead of $12 million for 2 years. That's what made sense to me. And then, like I said, I would have really fought to try to get a team option for the 4th year. But I believe in him, and I think that he's going to be really valuable for us this year. We're going to have to, JB was asking, Fred, I jump back again to the shooting coach, that he wanted him to have a program for every player on the team, and so that they can follow up on them when a problem occurs, so that he can help them to be effective in their shooting. So I might have already mentioned that. We know that Cade embodies everything that we want in a leader, and he's going to do that for us, and they're thrilled about that. And I think that we're in for an exciting year. I think it's going to be way more fun than last year. There were so many games we didn't play with heart and energy, and I think Cade mentioned that the veterans have some energy and a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I think that the whole team's going to have that. They're going to want revenge, but I just still think that JB is going to motivate them and inspire them, and there's going to be way more excitement and buy-in. I mean, I think Monty Williams, in my estimation, by looking at from what I saw, he just wanted to be this guy like Yoda, where he's this great, wise thinker and stuff. Instead of, that's not what basketball is about. You need wisdom and you need somebody to be smart, but you also need to light some fires, and among your players, and know that you care and that you're fighting for them, and you need to instill that in them in practice every day, and not try to be the cool, calm guy all the time. And you need to be cool and calm a lot of times, but you need to, once in a while, when your team is getting screwed, you need to get some, get a technical. So I don't think Monty ever got one, because Monty didn't want to pay the fine, even though he's making ridiculous amounts of money. So anyway, I just don't want to keep bashing on Monty, but again, I want to thank you all for listening, and I'm excited. I hope I can see some of you down at the open practice Saturday, and don't forget to watch the game on ESPN on Sunday against the Bucks at 8 o'clock on ESPN. And there's going to be just a lot. I did talk about some of the other things about Jaden and stuff. They think that he can do a lot more, and he can do stuff with the ball and handle the ball a little bit more, and get him earlier in the shot clock and make use of all of his talents. But we'll talk about that again later. But anyway, thank you for listening. Be the reason that somebody feels loved and cared for. Go Pistons.